He drills it. Oh, man, 66 for Aubrey.
Kickers have become too powerful.
I think sometimes we don't realize how good kickers in the NFL are.
Field goals are hugely important now. Are NFL kickers getting too good at their jobs?
On September 28, 2008, Lane Kiffin called a timeout as his Raiders were trying to score before half. The ball was on the Raiders' 41. Everyone assumed Jamarcus Russell was set to launch a Hail Mary, but Lane Kiffin shocked the world. He trotted out Sebastian Janikowski to attempt a 76-yard field goal, a full 13 yards longer than the NFL record at the time. Now, the kick didn't just fall short of the goal line, but Kiffin was mocked relentlessly. So much so that Raiders owner Al Davis fired him 2 days later. Fast forward 16 years, and Mike McCarthy sent out Brandon Aubrey to attempt a monster 71-yarder. Ultimately, he decided it was too risky, but unlike the infamous boot from Janikowski, nobody laughed. In fact, we all kind of felt like Aubrey could do it. This is how rapidly kickers evolved in less than 2 decades. They're making 50-yarders look like free throws. Watch Cameron Dicker from 59 on Monday Night Football.
Dicker from 59 yards would be a long for the guy that almost never misses. Drives it and knocks it through. How elite is this guy?
Dicker is an absurd 67 for 71 in his career. He's never missed from less than 50, which has been the theme of 2024. NFL kickers lined up to try a 50-plus yarder 39 times during the first 2 weeks. All but 4 of those went in. Oddly, Justin Tucker, the most accurate kicker in NFL history, was responsible for 2 of the misses. Let's compare that stat to 2006 for some context. Kickers nailed 35 50-yard bombs in the first 2 weeks, but as recently as 06, kickers only made 40 from that range in the entire season. Back then, their rate was below 50% from deep. This season, though, it's nearly 90%. Sure, kicking stats decline as the weather gets ugly, but you can't watch the NFL without feeling like something is drastically different. Field goal explosion isn't going to slow down. If anything, it hasn't reached its peak yet. Pretty soon, serious conversations that would have been unfathomable 2 decades ago will be had. Are NFL kickers getting too good, and should the league explore options to make field goals less automatic? Here's how we got to this point. The art of kicking was almost unrecognizable in the late 70s and early 80s. We'll take Michael Husted for example. He built a 9-year career in the NFL, but back in '83, he was trying out for his 9th grade football team when his coach asked if anyone could kick. Husted kept his head down because he wanted to play QB, but after nobody raised a hand, he reluctantly revealed that he plays soccer. Instantly, he became the kicker, and the only real instruction he received was to take 3 steps back, 2 steps over, and kick the ball. After showing the coach a few kicks straight on versus soccer style, the coach said, "Son, I don't care if you kick it with your ass, just get the ball through the uprights." Today, Husted laughs when describing the old landscape. The stereotype of the scrawny, unathletic kicker has completely eroded. Beyond the technique, the level of athlete has improved so much that modern kickers have showed off a 42-inch vertical on social, bench pressed 225 pounds for 25 reps at the combine, and even ran a 4.79 40. There's no more raising hands and forcing players into the role. Today's kids are specializing as early as middle school, and practice isn't enough. They take private lessons, attend camps, and even hire former pros as mentors. It is so competitive today that it's not unusual for a high school kicker to see a sports psychologist who can help them visualize the ball going through the uprights. Husted told Yahoo Sports, "When I was coming out of high school, there was maybe 1 kicking camp in the whole country. Now there's a pop-up shop on every corner." The NFL witnessed the increased exposure here and changed their game accordingly. The real explosion came from the emphasis on specialists. Take ex-Pro Bowl kicker Mike Hollis, for example. He told Yahoo Sports he rarely had as much as a full-time long snapper. Back in the 90s, many coaches preferred to save a roster spot by doubling a tight end as long snapper. In theory, it sounds resourceful, but there's a reason nobody does it anymore. It's much more difficult than it looks, and position players don't have the time to perfect the art. They're busy with their primary roles, which left kickers like Hollis less than 10 minutes each practice to work on field goals as a unit. Hollis's Jags were particularly inept. One year, they went as far as to practice punting and field goal drills simultaneously. This meant that Hollis could only get reps in with his primary long snapper and holder in warm-ups before games. Now, snappers don't get the love, but they've come almost as far as kickers. Some are so good today that they count the exact rotations of the ball so that it reaches the holder with the laces perfectly forward. All some holders have to do today is catch it and throw a finger down. Look at it like this. Mike Vanderjagt is one of the best of all time, and he didn't retire that long ago. When he hung him up in 06, he was statistically the greatest to ever do it. The most accurate kicker in NFL history. Less than 2 decades later, he's already slipped to 9th in the all-time list and will undoubtedly fall outside the top 10 as soon as Brandon Aubrey and Cameron Dicker become eligible with at least 100 attempts. The NFL isn't dumb. They see what's going on, and they're not like baseball. They constantly tweak the rules of the sport. In fact, they already did it in the kicking game by moving the extra point back. Here's what the NFL will most likely consider if owners ultimately decide that kickers have become too good for the old rules. The NFL has actually already given some thought to changes beyond the extra point. The 2015 Pro Bowl was a sneaky experiment. All the kickers you see here were invited to the game, but there was a catch. The NFL used the game as their personal lab. One experiment was the 33-yard extra point we know today, but the other was tightening the goalpost from 18 feet 6 inches to 14 feet. The changes were felt immediately as Adam Vinatieri botched a pair of extra points and a potential game-tying 38-yard field goal. He criticized the tweaks before and after the game, comparing them to if the NFL prohibited receivers from wearing gloves because they were catching the ball too well. Ultimately, the NFL went along with the revised point after, but listened to Vinatieri and disregarded the width of the uprights. The competition committee hasn't dabbled with the idea since. Now, assuming the trends continue, our guy Husted said he considers the NFL narrowing the uprights to 14 or even 13 feet an inevitable next evolution. He added, if that happens, he'd like to see 50-plus yarders worth 4 or even 5 points. Hollis went as far as to predict the NFL will raise the crossbar, but also offered a creative solution. He imagined a scenario in which there's a very skinny set of posts inside the normal set. If a kicker makes it through both, the team gets a bonus point. Now, it's definitely creative, but I don't see any scenario in which the NFL puts more power into the foots of kickers. In a completely opposite direction, Larry David has perhaps the most aggressive take of all.
How do you wave a wand? What do you do first as the commissioner of the National Football League, Larry David?
Number one, and I really don't care if people like it or not, I'm losing the goalposts.
Wait, what?
Why are there goalposts?
Okay.
Why are kickers, okay, they don't have football skills. They're not football players. I'm sure they're wonderful people, but they're not football players. Why are they kicking a ball through goalposts to decide games?
It's hard to argue against Larry. Kickers and snappers aren't really football players. Sure, they might tackle every now and then, but should the top 42 highest scoring players in NFL history all be kickers? If there was ever a time to say no, they shouldn't, it's 2024. Ka'imi Fairbairn banged 6 home from 50 plus in the first 2 weeks, and Austin Seibert drilled 7 total in a single game. It's been absurd, but the most telling moment was the conversation between Mike McCarthy and special teams coordinator John Fassel. It happened moments before Aubrey was about to attempt a 71-yarder. The Cowboys took over throwing 40-yard line with 9 seconds until halftime. McCarthy wasn't content to drain the clock and protect the 3-score lead. He asked Fassel how many yards the Cowboys needed to get Aubrey in range. Fassel responded, just crossed the 50, and no one batted an eye. Thank you guys, I'm Frank Michael Smith, and this piece was a collaboration between myself and Yahoo Sports writer Jeff Eisenberg. If you enjoyed or want more of these, please throw a like, write a thoughtful comment, or subscribe.